Prequels are incredibly difficult to pull off. One of the greatest elements in storytelling is surprise, catching you when you least expect it, having unpredictability. Every great story surpasses your expectations in some way. But what happens when you take that away? Prequels have the curse of the audience knowing where the story leads, and this makes it much tougher to give a truly unpredictable and captivating story, especially when the audience knows the fate of the characters. However, just because it's difficult doesn't mean it's impossible. Furiosa gives an incredible cinematic experience, and the storytelling is top-notch despite the audience knowing what will happen to a good chunk of the characters. We know that Furiosa will lose her arm at some point. What? Furiosa loses her arm in this movie? What the hell, bro? Stop spoiling it! But that doesn't stop George Miller from crafting an unforgettable film that keeps you on the edge of your seat the entire time. It's crazy to think about a world in which George Miller had access to all of this technology when he was younger and making the first Mad Max movies. George Miller is still kicking ass and taking names, but it is a tragedy to think about how he didn't have access to modern-day technology when he was in the prime of his life. And this lack of technology undoubtedly held back his movies from their full potential back in the day. It's sad to think about this, and then it's even sadder when you think about all of the other filmmakers who had immense visions but were held back by the constraints of their time. Moving past that though, Furiosa is still an incredible movie, and it shows that George Miller still has it at almost 80 years old. Furiosa is, in my opinion, the greatest prequel ever made in the modern era of films. Granted, there is not a lot of competition there. What I love about Furiosa as a prequel though is just how well it complements Fury Road, and it's a rare case where I would recommend watching the movies in chronological order. I also love Furiosa's symbolism and richer storytelling aspects, and this enhances the movie to be more than just a blockbuster. Although, the pure entertainment side of this movie is present too. This movie just does everything right, and the first aspect I want to talk about is the pacing of Furiosa. I've actually seen some people complaining about the pacing and the chapter system that this film goes for, but it honestly worked for me. I love the pacing in this movie, and I felt that it maintained the intensity without giving you any extraneous scenes that could get in the way of that intensity. I know some people are saying that the movie could have cut certain parts, but I honestly appreciated the world building, and I didn't find any section to be glaringly unnecessary. I also really appreciated some of the transition scenes to demonstrate a jump in time. There was a sequence where a wig is on a branch, and you see the branch grow in a time lapse, and I love this. Fury Road is set in the span of a few days, so it only dips to black to show a small jump in time. But since Furiosa has a greater time span, you get more of these beautiful transitions. From the opening scene, which is one of the greatest openings I've ever seen, Furiosa hits the ground running, and that pace never halts during the film. It really feels like the movie is a roller coaster that starts at the drop and continues to go downhill, getting faster and faster, in a good way of course. This movie is just so intense, and there is not a single moment that actually feels like a break for exposition. No scene feels unnecessary, and the film perfectly portions itself for each part of Furiosa's life. The film, like Fury Road, does an excellent job of getting down to business and amplifying the intensity. Furiosa really gives you a unique feeling of intensity that I haven't witnessed any other film do recently. In most movies, you can usually feel the length, and Furiosa is not a short film by any means, but it really does go by incredibly quickly, and this is due to that escalating pace the film maintains. Another aspect that helps keep that intensity throughout the film is Chris Hemsworth as Dementus. He does a fantastic job of playing this evil but charismatic wasteland leader, and there is never a dull moment with Dementis. Even in moments where he is just walking around and conversing, his unpredictable and savage presence just completely engulfs the scene. I also love how clever his character is, and how he utilizes what he has to get what he wants. His tactics and strategies are captivating to watch, and nothing feels like a cheap victory or plot armor protecting him. The writing behind Dementis does a good job at justifying the choices for the character and how they seem right from his twisted perspective on the world. Don't get me wrong, Anya Taylor-Joy does a great job as usual, but Chris Hemsworth is the standout of this movie. The suspense in this movie is also fantastic, and George Miller is a master at using it to create tension. It's going to sound incredibly basic, but suspense is really all about letting the audience in on something before the characters are aware about that element, whatever it may be. The great filmmakers of the past were exceptional at using suspense, and George Miller does a great job of implementing these lessons from the past into these dystopian worlds. A great example in Fury Road is when Furiosa shows the hidden blade in the gear shifter that Max doesn't know about, and we as the audience are anticipating what Furiosa will do to the unsuspecting Max who is on another part of the war rig. We have moments like this in Furiosa 2, and for the sake of avoiding spoilers, I will only bring up a part from the opening scene where Furiosa cuts a tube on a motorcycle, and you are now wondering when that bike will run out of gas and foil some plans. It's incredibly satisfying to watch George Miller have so much suspense and tension in these gigantic wasteland worlds, and despite the scales of these movies, he still finds a way to keep a tight atmosphere that makes you focus on the situation at hand. I also love the creativity of this movie, and the various designs of the makeshift equipment and vehicles. Compared to other wastelands, like the Fallout wasteland for example, Mad Max's world might seem bland since there are no radiated monstrosities or otherworldly animals. But the world of Mad Max stays alive through the depictions of what man has had to resort to, and the various technologies they come up with using the resources they have on hand. It's always really cool to see the various ways the Wastelanders in the world of Mad Max survive and utilize the remnants of civilization, and Furiosa has the greatest depiction of this in the franchise. This movie does everything incredibly well, but now I want to move on to how it compares with Fury Road. Both movies are fantastic in their own right, but the main difference between these movies is scale. Everything in Furiosa is bigger than Fury Road. The action sequences, the locations, the explosions, the world, you name it, and Furiosa takes what was present in Fury Road and cranks it to 11. However, there is a price to pay for this expansion on scale, and that is a greater reliance on CGI. Compared to Fury Road, Furiosa is much heavier on using visual effects. A lot of people like the use of practical effects and giant set pieces that George Miller is known for, but in Furiosa, the scale is just simply too big to not use some CGI. I know a lot of people don't like CGI, but given the scale this movie goes for, it is unavoidable. Now, I've been glazing this movie and overdosing on recency bias, but if there is one glaring flaw with Furiosa, it's the CGI. Furiosa looks too perfect, too clean to be a wasteland. The movie looking too perfect also makes it easier to spot the use of green screens, and this can break the immersion of the movie. This seems to be an issue that extends beyond Furiosa though, as many modern movies are cited as having this problem. I understand this complaint, and Fury Road's grime and dirt does make it look better and more lived in. This really is the only issue this movie has, and the scale of the film only magnifies the problem since it's forced to rely on CGI. Nonetheless, it's still a good-looking movie, it just feels too clean when compared to Fury Road. I see some people saying that the world being too perfect makes it feel like Furiosa is never in any real danger. And while I agree for the most part, I do think another reason we don't view Furiosa as being in danger is because we have seen Fury Road and know she will survive. This is a price to pay with prequels, and if we imagine a world in which Furiosa came out before Fury Road, where we don't know what happens with Furiosa, then we would likely feel a lot more of that danger behind her action scenes. It's really a damn shame though that this is the one issue this movie has, because it's an issue that you will notice throughout the entire film. And I feel like if Furiosa just added some more grain and texture to its world, then the film would be getting a lot more praise, and people wouldn't be so quick to dismiss it since it looks worse than Fury Road. Speaking about Dune Part 2, that movie and Furiosa are the clear frontrunners for the best films of the year. It really seems like 2024 is the year of the blockbuster, and it's kind of funny how much Dune Part 2 and Furiosa have in common. Both are science fiction, set in lawless deserts, dealing with captivating rulers, and how they play into the political landscape and the yearning of both protagonists to avenge their fallen parents. Both movies also dabble with various religious ideas, with Dune focusing more on Islamic aspects that relate to the Fremen, and Furiosa having various Christian symbolism. This is also a great time to segue into the next aspect I want to talk about in Furiosa, and that is the depth of this movie. Furiosa and Fury Road as well are deceptively deep movies that relate to various biblical themes. Fury Road deals a lot with the figure of a redeemer, and there is a lot of symbolism to show the parallels between the movie and the Bible. Furiosa continues these biblical themes, and for an example that doesn't give spoilers, the opening scene is a direct parallel to the fall of humanity with Adam and Eve. I just love how Furiosa and Fury Road can be satisfying if viewed purely as popcorn action films, but these movies also have the depth and nuance that truly makes them more than just your typical blockbuster. These movies call for multiple viewings so that you can get at what is beyond the surface, and I look forward to rewatching Furiosa to analyze how deep this movie goes. However, despite my glaze fest for Furiosa, there are some incredibly small flaws that I noticed with this movie. There are some continuity errors with Furiosa's robotic arm. It's clearly her left arm, but in some close-up shots, it becomes her right arm. It's a small continuity error that is only there for a few frames, but you will notice it if you're paying attention to the film. For this next small technical flaw, I didn't notice it, but my friend brought it up to me, and that is that there are these inner cards for the introduction of a new location. For example, Gastown is introduced with this caption saying, "Gastown, the second fortress of the wasteland," and Bullet Farm has a caption following that same format. The nitpick though is that this caption is completely missing for the Citadel, which is the first fortress of the wasteland. They don't introduce the Citadel with the same formatting, and this could be a problem for first-time viewers who don't know what the Citadel is. If we're getting into the weeds here, then they should have had one for the Citadel to keep the movie uniform with how it presents its locations. This isn't a problem for most of us though, since we are used to the world of Mad Max and know what the locations are. But for some first-time viewers, like my friend, I could see this causing some confusion. Past those nitpicks though, Furiosa is a fantastic movie that everybody needs to see in the theaters. It's incredibly sad that Furiosa isn't doing well in the box office, especially given that it's the best movie out right now and easily one of the best films of the year. George Miller is a living legend, and there are few like him left in Hollywood. Even if Furiosa isn't perfect, it's still an extremely fun watch and a solid movie overall, and I hope people take advantage of the time to see this movie in the theaters while they still can. This is 100% a theater movie, and you are seriously missing out if you don't witness it on the big screen. Do yourself a favor, empty your guzzling into the toilet because this is a long one, and watch Furiosa. This is a movie that you do not want to miss a second of, and watch it while you still can. Furiosa gave me an experience that I will never forget about, and it's been a long time since I felt anything like this. I am so happy I watched this movie in IMAX, and unlike other movies where you only watch it for the spectacle, Furiosa is a film— oh my god guys, Furiosa is a film that actually captures your attention and soul. Furiosa for me is one of the greatest prequels ever made, and it might even be the greatest movie to come out of 2024. Thank you George Miller and the team behind the movie for giving us an experience that we will never forget. I will end this video off with a quote from the movie. The question is, do you have what it takes to make it epic? After watching this movie, Furiosa just gave a new definition to that word.